I have a very interesting program today. I want to thank you for joining me for another perspective. I was wondering today, all day today, about what I'm doing as a believer. Why am I moved? Why am I motivated to do the things that I do to try to help folks? And there's certain areas in my life that I need help. It's always been that way. I don't know, man. It's got to be the God part of it. I just see suffering people and it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think that when you recognize who you are, when you recognize that there is a source of all things, some call the source God, some have other names, but when you recognize that there is an originating source of all of creation, all that we know, and that we are a part of that creation, then you have to recognize that we're all related to each other. Because it's like a big family. We're all created from the same family, from the same parent. And so how can you see your brother suffer and not be moved? It always amazes me. The dysfunction of prosperity, maybe. I don't know if it's prosperity, but of this nation. Maybe this nation, up until a few years back, we've been pretty prosperous. And a nation as a whole, I mean, it's like we do give and we do help people in other nations and other countries. Often with an ulterior motive, but maybe that's okay. But then we do give a lot to charities. I wonder, would we give so much to charities if we couldn't write them off on our taxes? Maybe we would. I don't know. And maybe why do we give so much to charities? Is it maybe because there's a little bit of guilt mixed in there and it sort of assuages some of the guilt? I mean, to me, it's like every Thanksgiving around elementary schools. There are particular plays that are put on with the Pilgrims and the Native American Indians and how the Pilgrims survived the first winter and how important the Native Americans were, who knew how to survive, who knew how to live. But then we look around today and we see no Native Americans anywhere. Do we ever ask ourselves why? Did we ever follow the trail of how helpful they were to the Pilgrims and then today there are none? We do treat a lot of people poorly. It's a human thing. I think it should be a human thing. I don't know, it just seems to me that maybe we're lost as humanity. We've just been lost. And maybe as we look around and we begin to see, if you grew up in like a strict home or something, or a home where the parents were serious, okay, or the parent was serious, and you kept messing up, or you didn't treat your siblings right, or you didn't treat folks right, or you didn't take care of what you were given properly, your benefits might have been taken away from you. Your allowance may have been taken away. You might have had to go to bed with no dinner, or some of your freedoms, or some of your benefits were taken away. No TV tonight, or whatever. And so maybe from a creator scale, or from a creator standpoint, maybe we are being punished. Maybe our allowance is being taken away from us. That's the economic crash, okay, and the loss of our jobs and all that stuff, right? Maybe we're being sent home without our dinner, you know. And that's some of the other economic woes we have as individual families in this nation, or even as a nation itself. And a lot of the benefits, a lot of the things that we've enjoyed. We've been a prosperous nation. We've blown money on this type things and those type things. And now if we could just, sometimes we look and probably wish if we could turn back the hands of time and bank some of the money that we just blew, like crazy. Our allowance has been cut off. Our situation is a lot more jacked up than it was. Maybe we are being punished. I don't know. But to me, we really need to, or at least we don't need to, I suppose. We just do what we want to do. But for me personally, I see a connection between all humanity. Whether it's Muslim, or whether it's Christian, whether it's Buddhist, whether it's Hindu, whether it's atheist, whether it's any other religion or no religion at all. There's a connection that humanity has with each other. We are brother and sister to each other. And I know folks are just blowing it off. Oh, well, that's not how we feel. But look at our situation. Look at our lives. Our country is crumbling economically, morally, and every way. Now, we could sit here, and we want to banter around the argument whether it's the Democrats or Republicans. But right now, this Democratic, president in office and all the things are going their particular way somewhat. And stuff is jacked up. But in all fairness, the Republicans that were in office before the Democrats, just this last couple of years ago, this when everything started jacking up. So it was jacked up basically under both administrations. And if the Republicans had been in office for a year longer, come on, it's time to be honest. Especially believers. Isn't that what we're supposed to be about, honesty? If the Republicans had stayed in office a year longer, how Bush was glad to get up out of there. If he was still in there, what do you think their situation would have been? The situation would have been worse or jacked up as much, but it wouldn't be any better. You know that. So maybe if we'd stop playing these silly little games and recognize that we just simply might be suffering in a divine way because of particular mindsets that we've had, we might be able to find a way to begin to fix ourselves and dig ourselves out of this mess, and recognizing it's not about a Democratic president, it's not about a Republican president. It's about the believers recognizing that we're not loving our neighbor. And to me, that's it. I'm sitting here, even as I'm just talking today, I'm sitting here trying to decide what exactly this message is going to be about, and this is it. We have an entire Bible with all kinds of stuff in there, all kinds of history and rules and regulations and suggestions and all these things that we're being told that we're supposed to do, interpreted by this group, interpreted by that group, and all through the hands of men. But for me, from another perspective, we need to find a way to simplify this thing. Simplify this thing that we call Christianity, this thing that we've bought into, and see what it really says. There are two things Jesus said. Jesus said, this is what Jesus said. You call yourself a Christian. Jesus said, if you love these are the two greatest commandments. He said, love God with all of your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And if you can do these two things, all the laws and the prophets hang on these two commandments. That is to say, if you can do these two things, you don't have to worry about anything else in the Bible. Everything else will take care of itself. That's what Jesus said. Now we, in the religion, Christian religion, have come up with all kinds of things you have to do, you have to say, you have to be in order to be right with the Creator. But Jesus himself, who we call ourselves Christians after, said, if we do these two things, we don't have to worry about anything else. Love God with all your heart and love each other. What does that mean? I was in a church recently in a Bible study, and this minister was sort of saying that we don't have to love everybody. We just have to love fellow believers. This is how they'll know that you're believers, by the love that you have one for another. And yes, that's what Jesus said to these particular disciples who were even having a hard time loving each other. But Jesus said to love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. And that was the second greatest commandment to loving God with all of your heart. And so then you ask yourself, well, who's my neighbor? And guess what? They ask him that. Because that's just how we are today. We want to justify why it's okay not to love our neighbor. So it's this that we're going through today with the Muslims, this that we're going through today with the Jews, this thing that we're going today with the homosexuals, this thing that we're going through today with every black folks against whites or whites against blacks or any other group out there. It's nothing new. When Jesus was trying to tell these folks to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself, the first thing this man said, well, who's my neighbor? Trying to justify or trying to make an excuse for why he didn't have to love everybody. Come on, define to me, Jesus, who's my neighbor? And Jesus told the story of a Samaritan, a good Samaritan. My daughter loves this story. And he said there was a gentleman that went down to Jericho to do what, and Jericho was a bad city. And he fell amongst some bad folks. They beat him up badly, took his stuff, and left him on the side of the road to die. And the story goes on to say there was a particular religious man that came walking by and saw him cross the side of the road and went another way. And a Levite, another religious guy, saw him cross the road. Nobody helped this man. But then all of a sudden this Samaritan comes along, who later in Scripture we begin to know him as the Good Samaritan. The Samaritan came along, saw this man, picked him up, tended to his needs, took him to a hotel, tended to him some more, left, and then told the hotel manager, the man running the establishment, that let this man stay here as long as he needs and give him whatever he needs. And then when I return, I'll take care of his bill. That was it. So we say, oh man, that's a wonderful story, the Good Samaritan. Jesus was talking to Jews. Jews hated Samaritans. Jews felt that if you spoke to a Samaritan, you would be defiled. Remember the story where Jesus was going with his disciples and said, I must needs go through Samaria, and he spoke to that woman by the well? If you look at a map, the destination where Jesus and his disciples were going, they had to go directly through Samaria, which was the shortest way to get to where they were going. But any good Jew would never go through the land of Samaria. I don't care how long it took. They would go around Samaria rather than go through Samaria to be defiled by the Samaritans. That's how Jews felt about Samaritans. That's why even that woman at the wells was surprised when Jesus spoke to her and asked her for a drink. She said, how then you being a Jew would speak to me who am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have nothing to do with Samaritans. This woman knew how Jews felt about Samaritans. The people Jesus was telling this story to about the Good Samaritan, they were Jews. They knew how they felt about Samaritans. Jesus said this Samaritan helped a man who hated him, and Jesus told them to be like that Samaritan, to not only tend to the people who love you, not only love your brothers so the world will know that you are believers. Jesus said be like this Samaritan, even to the point of tending to the needs of someone who hates you. We have a hard time with the folks that we hate. Jesus took it a step further. You're not supposed to hate anybody. And even people that hate you, be like that Samaritan. Talking to us today, Jesus said, love your neighbor. Who's your neighbor? Jesus said, be like that Samaritan. Even love people who hate you. Okay? That's it. Do we do that? And see, that's the frustration. I mean, I've been in this religion now since I was 28. I'm 52 now. I was raised in it. At 17, spent 10 years as an atheist, but came back at 28. I've been here ever since. And I've functioned in ministry. I've just been a regular parishioner. I've taught teenage kids. I've taught elementary school kids. I was an evangelist in the neighborhoods. I was prison ministry 17 years. Pastor, staff pastor in the church 16 years. I've been through the ministries in church. And I've known the people, I've met the people, I've prayed with the people, cried with the people, been there with the people. We have a problem in our religion today. It's corrupt. We swear it's correct. We swear it's inerrant, infallible, and all this stuff. But Jesus told us two things to do, was to love God with all our heart and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And we understand who our neighbor is. It's everybody on this planet. We can't do that. We're messed up. We're lost. I'm not saying we're lost in the sense that we're going to hell or, whatever the worst thing that could happen to you, because according to Scripture we understand that where sin abounds, grace does more abound. But just to recognize what we have embraced as our religion and how we've walked in it, it's corrupt. Getting back to the American Indians, where are they today? This is the Pledge of Allegiance. In God we trust. We took God out of the schools. That's what all this blah blah blah. Come on, you tell me we took God out of the schools in what, the 1960s? Ask the American Indian when God left. I mean, come on now, come on now. Don't think about taking God out of the schools. That's ridiculous. We took God out of our hearts.